Hello everyone! Tonight we are venturing into a world where jagged, snow-capped peaks kiss the very stars, where the air bites with the clean, brutal promise of wilderness, and ancient, unyielding traditions carve the lives of those brave or foolish enough to dwell there. Imagine for a moment that you're perched on a wind-swept crag, the silence of 1,000,000 empty miles echoing around you, a sheer drop below your numb toes, and only the scent of pine and something distinctly feral tickling your nostrils. You're definitely not in Kansas anymore, or even civilization for that matter. In fact, if you found yourself here unprepared, you probably won't survive this for more than a few hours. This isn't just a story, it's a descent into the raw, unforgiving cradle of the Hyrcanian Highlands and the legendary Vendia of Robert E. Howard's vivid imagination. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get going tonight. You know, most folks think of mountains and immediately conjure images of cozy ski chalets or Instagram-worthy sunrise vistas. But tonight, wipe that vision clean from your mind. We're talking about the truly immense, soul-crushingly vast stretches of the Himalayan range, the mythical Vendia of Robert E. Howard's world. Here, the mountains aren't just geological features. They're sentient, indifferent gods that loom over every single waking moment. Picture a landscape so grand, so terrifyingly indifferent, that even the birds sound apologetic when they tweet. You feel it in your bones, that chill that isn't just from the altitude, but from the sheer, unending emptiness stretching out in every direction. It's where the sky feels closer and, frankly, much more judgmental. And into this glorious, frozen indifference, we throw ourselves. Tonight, you find yourself amidst a collection of rough-and-tumble mountain men, a clan known as the Afghulis. These aren't your average weekend warriors with fancy trekking poles. These are hardened, leather-faced individuals whose smiles probably involve more teeth than sincerity. They live off the land, by the land, and if necessary, off other people who aren't fast enough on the land. Their faces are tanned, lined, and perpetually grim, like they're all holding a deep, profound secret. Or maybe they just forgot where they put their car keys last. You wouldn't invite them to your book club. Let's just say that. Yet despite their intimidating presence and their general predisposition towards a healthy dose of brigandry, you notice something truly remarkable. They defer. Not to a wizened elder with a long white beard and a knack for fortune-telling, although there's plenty of fortune-taking around here, trust me, but to a broad-shouldered, blue-eyed giant who moves among them with an almost casual authority. This isn't just leadership by popular vote. It's the kind of leadership forged in the crucible of battle, the undeniable respect paid to sheer, brutal competency. This, my friend, is where our story truly begins. With Conan, the Cimmerian barbarian, a figure who probably considers personal space to be any area where his sword can't quite reach. Historians still debate whether tribal groups in these ancient mountain regions truly formed stable hierarchies. But what you're seeing right now defies the neat categories of academic texts. Conan isn't a traditional chief, not in the way these mountain tribes typically chose their leaders. He's an outsider, a foreigner, as he's often reminded, even if he often sounds like he's having a philosophical debate with a brick wall. And yet, they follow him. The reason is simple, brutish, and deeply practical. He wins. Where other leaders led them to glorious defeat, Conan has led them to decidedly inglorious, yet incredibly lucrative, victories. He's not big on motivational speeches. He's more of a point in a direction, and then make sure everyone is actually going that way kind of guy. It works for the Afghulis because, frankly, they appreciate results more than eloquence. Think of it like being coached by a particularly gruff personal trainer who never quite figured out how to use his indoor voice. He found himself among these wild men in a roundabout way, as Conan often does. A botched raid, a quick betrayal, and then a period of wandering in these inhospitable peaks. It was during this time that he found his way into a simmering tribal conflict. Perhaps he lent a hand, perhaps he took a hand, or a head. It's really all much of a muchness to him. Whatever the exact series of unfortunate events, he established himself not just as a fighter, but as a cunning tactician. He's like that annoying chess opponent who never bothers to learn the actual names of the pieces, just moves them until he wins. The Afghulis, despite their reputation for stubbornness and preferring the company of a particularly nasty-looking goat to most human beings, recognized a good thing when they saw it. This isn't just a tough guy, this is a tough guy who thinks. A very dangerous combination indeed. Now don't confuse Vendya with, say, the tranquil majesty of Nepal or Bhutan. While the Himalayas certainly exist, and the cultural tapestry is incredibly rich, the Vendya of Conan's time is far more raw, untamed, and fraught with immediate life-ending peril. Imagine your phone dies, you're lost, and there are no cute cafes around. Only grizzled warriors, occasional wild animals that don't want selfies, and potentially hostile deities. A good portion of this region has yet to feel the gentle touch of civilization, which for our purposes just means more opportunities for Conan to do what he does best: smash things, solve problems, and look brooding. Interestingly enough, while we tend to associate large predatory birds with eagles or vultures in mountain ranges, did you know that the lammergeier, also known as the bearded vulture, specifically specializes in dropping bones from high altitudes onto rocks to break them open and access the marrow? They're basically the original bone crushers of the animal kingdom. Much like Conan, they solve a complex problem with blunt force, although their methods are perhaps a little less, shall we say, personal. The point is, nature itself reflects the brutal efficiency required to survive in such an environment. The Afghulis are very much part of this ecosystem, predators among predators, just like their natural counterparts. Their knowledge of these peaks, these secret passes, and these ancient, almost forgotten trails is absolute. Conan, for all his strength, leans on their knowledge of the terrain as much as they rely on his brute force and strategic mind. The biting wind whistles through your makeshift camp, carrying the distant scent of pine and something else, something coppery and cold, a promise of conflict on the horizon. The kind of promise you definitely didn't sign up for, unless your preferred vacation involves a very high probability of being robbed and possibly dismembered. This isn't just about survival. It's about navigating a world where ancient legends bleed into current events, and where every shadow seems to hold a secret. This land holds the whispers of deep, dark sorcery, and even these fierce Afghulis, who fear little in the material world, know enough to give certain hidden valleys a wide berth. Even Conan, with all his practical disbelief, feels the prickle of unnatural tension in the air. He probably thinks it's just poor ventilation, but something darker is definitely brewing among the towering, silent mountains. Tonight, you sleep, but trust me, you won't sleep soundly. The mountain air, remember it? The one that was carrying whispers last night? Well, those whispers aren't just the wind playing tricks anymore. Now it's more like a low, unsettling hum, like your refrigerator finally decided to reveal its deepest, darkest fears, or maybe just needs a good defrost. For generations, the mountain tribes, including our beloved Afghulis, knew certain valleys and peaks were wrong. Not wrong in a, "oh, I accidentally walked into the wrong yoga class" way, but wrong in a, "my internal compass just burst into flames and I can smell burning ozone" way. These were places where shadows felt deeper, where the light seemed to dim even on a clear day, and where an uncomfortable chill settled in your bones even if you were wrapped in every piece of sheepskin you could find. It was just the rumor of something off, a kind of superstitious unease that kept people away. But lately the whispers have grown louder, bolder. You hear tales, hushed and nervous around campfires, of strangers moving through these forbidden zones. Not your average rough-and-tumble bandits. Oh no, these folks are different. They wear strange, dark robes that seem to absorb the very light around them, and their faces are often obscured, either by hoods pulled low, or more disturbingly by a sheer, palpable wrongness that discourages close inspection. If you squint hard enough, you might make out figures who seem to walk without making sound, or who disappear from your peripheral vision as soon as you look directly at them. These are the elusive, unsettling sorcerers of the Black Circle. They are, to put it mildly, the opposite of the kind of people you'd invite to your holiday potluck. They're more sacrifice a goat than secret Santa. What kind of sorcery are we talking about here? Not the fire and brimstone kind that usually comes to mind when you hear the word. Oh no, that would be too direct. The Black Circle traffics in something far more insidious, something that worms its way into your mind, twisting perceptions and corrupting will. Think less Gandalf versus the Balrog, and more gaslighting you so effectively you forget your own name. Their power is subtle, insidious, and devastatingly effective against those who rely on conventional sight and sense. You might feel a profound sense of despair creeping in, a crushing hopelessness that isn't yours. Or you might see things that aren't there, shadows playing tricks, friends turning into foes with a blink of an eye. It's enough to make you miss good old-fashioned sword fights, frankly. And their ambitions? Far from simply holed up in a cave performing weird rituals, these dark practitioners have extended their shadowy tendrils beyond the mountains. They've cast their gaze upon the rich, vibrant kingdom of Vendia itself. Vendia, with its shimmering palaces, its bustling markets, and its elaborate court system. You see, the people of the Black Circle don't just want power, they want control. And the easiest way to get that control, if you're a power-hungry sorcerer, is to puppet the guy, or gal in this case, who's already sitting on the big, uncomfortable chair with the crown. Speaking of crowns, Vendia is currently ruled by Devi Yasmina, a queen renowned not just for her striking beauty, but for her formidable intelligence and martial prowess. She's not some simpering damsel in distress, not by a long shot. She's the kind of monarch who would probably give you a thorough dressing down and then defeat you in a fencing match. An authoritative historical fact you might find surprising is that strong female rulers were not uncommon in ancient civilizations, from Egyptian pharaohs like Hatshepsut to Celtic warrior queens such as Boudica. But even the fiercest of rulers is vulnerable to a subtle, unseen enemy. The Black Circle knew this. Their strategy? A chillingly elegant one, if you consider insidious manipulation elegant. They infiltrated the Vendian court through whispers, subtle enchantments, and direct psychic influence. And who better to start with than the queen's own family? Her younger brother, Bunda Chand, the crown prince and heir, has become their prime target. He's a good kid, perhaps a bit impressionable, definitely not ready to face something like ancient, soul-sucking sorcery over breakfast. So now, under the malign influence of the Black Circle, his actions, his thoughts, even his very dreams are being twisted. It's like watching your favorite TV show suddenly start broadcasting infomercials for existential dread, unsettling to say the least. You feel a growing dread within the mountain camp, an unease even the normally stoic Afghulis cannot shake. They've seen what this subtle magic can do, the way it warps minds and twists loyalties. A few weeks ago, a band of hunters returned from the foothills, babbling about seeing phantoms, about their hunting dogs turning on each other in a frenzy of inexplicable rage. One grizzled old hunter, who had seen more horrors than you'd find in a month of bad Netflix documentaries, was reduced to a shaking mess, convinced he had witnessed the ghost of his dead brother demanding his left big toe. Spoiler alert, he probably didn't. This slow-burn psychic assault has caused widespread paranoia and mistrust throughout the Vendian kingdom. Whispers turn into outright accusations. Paranoia runs rampant. Royal advisors accuse each other of treason. Civil unrest simmers, and the general public, bless their innocent hearts, are just trying to figure out why everyone seems so intensely unhappy, like the royal family just announced a new, mandatory Monday morning meeting for everyone. The kingdom, once stable and prosperous, now teeters on the brink of internal collapse, meticulously orchestrated by a shadowy group whose existence is largely unknown, even to their victims. This situation, though rooted in ancient tales, has a strangely modern parallel, if you think about it. It's a classic information war, where perception is reality, and doubt is your enemy's deadliest weapon. Historians still debate whether mass hysteria events in antiquity were solely driven by environmental factors or if deliberate, sophisticated psychological warfare played a part. Perhaps it's a bit of both, just like that strange noise your car makes that could be either a dying transmission or just a loose CD in the changer. The Black Circle exploits the very fabric of belief and trust, unraveling a society from within. They operate with precision and patience, understanding that the greatest power isn't derived from flashy displays, but from quiet, consistent corrosion. An odd or off-topic fact that might help put things in perspective regarding secret societies. The first known secret handshake is often attributed to the ancient Roman collegia, which were professional or religious associations to verify membership in a clandestine environment. While not directly malevolent, these early secret societies demonstrate a historical precedent for covert communication and control, which the Black Circle has perfected to an unnerving degree. Except, instead of a handshake, theirs is probably more like a shared, unsettling vision of a giant, sentient black hole, making you sign an NDA. Now, imagine Conan, our practical, battle-hardened barbarian, watching all this unfold. He's no mystic. He believes in the sharp edge of a blade and the crushing blow of a hammer, not in ethereal whispers or invisible puppet strings. His approach to problems is generally to cut them down until they stop being problems. So, to hear the vague, unsettling rumors from the lowlands, and to see even his fierce Afghulis twitching with nervous energy, has to be quite a different kind of irritant for him. He probably just wants to find the source of all this bad juju and whack it with something heavy. But what if it can't be whacked? That's the real question hanging in the chilling Vendian air. You might feel the familiar itch of your scalp tingling as you listen to the night's eerie sounds. It's not just the altitude. So, the air is thick with unease, the royal family is in some kind of existential funk, and strange-robed figures are whispering poison into the Vendian political machine. If you're Conan, whose general philosophy on life is, if it's a problem, stab it until it stops being a problem, this sort of nuanced, psychic assault must be intensely irritating. He's not one for subtleties, not a man who spends his evenings pondering the mysteries of the universe or the inner turmoil of the human psyche. His biggest internal debates probably involve whether to kick open a door or just rip it off its hinges. So when tales of mind-bending sorcery started reaching his mountain stronghold, rumors of unseen hands twisting wills of noblemen babbling about phantom serpents, and of Queen Yasmina's own brother acting like he's got a very confused hive of bees buzzing inside his skull. It's safe to say Conan probably just scratched his beard, grunted, and figured it was probably indigestion, or maybe some particularly strong bad dates. But even a practical man like Conan, one who measures value in terms of sharpened steel and solid gold, understands leverage. He understands opportunity. The chaos engulfing the Vendian kingdom, a kingdom historically wary of, well, everyone, including a band of rowdy Afghulis, represented a shifting power dynamic. The traditional centers of power were faltering, consumed from within. The mountains were now more than just a haven for bandits. They were potentially the only bastion of independent, untainted strength. This isn't just a barbarian recognizing a chance to cause a little mischief. It's a canny strategist, seeing the larger geopolitical currents swirling around him. He probably doesn't have a giant world map tacked up with red string and pushpins, but his internal calculations are just as sophisticated. Think of it as him seeing the entire chessboard and realizing the queen just hung herself out to dry. Conan has a nose for weakness, not just in an enemy's guard, but in the very fabric of society. And right now, the fabric of Vendia was fraying. The sorcerers of the Black Circle might be dabbling in arcane manipulation and shadowy whisper campaigns, but Conan's response is decidedly more tangible. They create chaos. He plans to capitalize on it. This situation offers a delicious irony. While the Black Circle intends to control Vendia from the shadows, Conan intends to make Vendia painfully aware of his very physical presence. He's the anti-ghost. What are his unknown objectives? Conan is never one to stick to a rigid agenda. One day he's a pirate, the next a general, then a king, and today a tribal leader contemplating a hostile takeover of a troubled kingdom. His motivations are often a tangled weave of pragmatic self-interest, an insatiable lust for adventure, and a primal desire for wealth and power. Sometimes it's just the sheer bloody-minded satisfaction of proving himself superior, especially to someone he views as weak or ineffective. Think of it as a form of extreme, high-stakes career ladder climbing, except the ladders are made of broken swords, and your co-workers are constantly trying to kill you. So, these unknown objectives aren't some grand philosophical quest. They are likely a combination of personal enrichment. Conan always appreciates a good treasure hoard, probably for an excellent sword polish, increased influence for his Afghuli tribe, and perhaps a new domain to rule if the Vendian rulers prove too inept. It's simple, really. See chaos, seize opportunity, profit. Now, an authoritative historical fact that might illuminate Conan's perspective on seizing opportunities. In many ancient tribal societies, the idea of a fixed national border or eternal allegiance was fluid. Power was often a zero-sum game. If a kingdom faltered, it was often seen as an opening for stronger, more opportunistic groups to expand their territory or influence. Empires rose and fell like tides, and clever leaders like Conan were expert at riding the waves of fortune, sometimes even creating them. His perspective is rooted in this practical reality, far removed from modern diplomatic niceties. For the Afghulis, the situation was also an open door to plunder and glory, but with an unfamiliar enemy. They were used to raiding merchant caravans or rival tribes. This invisible, mind-controlling sorcery was a new and uncomfortable beast. They're more concerned with avoiding supernatural shenanigans than delving into political intricacies. Conan, however, sees the fear this unseen enemy causes and calculates how it can be turned to his advantage. If the powerful Vendian court is crippled by unseen psychic attacks, their conventional defenses would be weakened. This presents a unique window of opportunity, a crack in the armor that a simple axe-wielder like Conan can exploit, where a general with 1,000 cavalry might fail. He's not exactly signing up to be the hero, but he is planning on being the one who comes out on top. Historians still debate whether true strategic vacuum theories fully explain collapses of power structures, or if deeper internal rot is always the primary culprit. But for Conan, he just saw the vacuum and considered how to fill it with more Conan. He's not waiting for a formal invitation to a peace summit. He's calculating how many men he needs to make an impression and which mountain passes are least likely to be swarming with psychic landmines. It's a very practical approach to magic. Treat it as another obstacle, and if you can't smash it, then work around it. One particularly odd or off-topic fact to consider about pragmatism. Did you know that ancient Egyptians sometimes used crocodile poop as a form of primitive sunscreen? While the science behind that is debatable, it demonstrates an extreme form of pragmatic, if somewhat smelly, problem-solving in the face of environmental challenges. Much like Conan, they were finding a way to cope with their immediate problems using available, unconventional, and perhaps unpleasant methods. Though I doubt Conan is slathering anything exotic on his skin for protection. He probably just thinks it makes him look tougher. He already gives off a faint aura of, "Don't mess with me," mixed with the subtle scent of campfire smoke and existential dread. The initial tremors of the Black Circle's influence, felt by you and the Afghulis, weren't dismissed by Conan as mere superstition for long. He observed the effects, even if he couldn't grasp the arcane mechanics. The fear, the madness, the widespread political paralysis, these were undeniable realities. He knew Vendya was weakening. He understood that whoever controlled the flow of power, even in a crisis, ultimately controlled the future. And with the royal house compromised, the opportunity to position himself, or his adopted tribe, as an undeniable force in the region was simply too good to ignore. You can almost feel the strategic wheels turning in his head, an unseen rumble beneath the harsh mountain wind. This isn't a rush to rescue, not a valiant charge motivated by noble ideals. This is a cold, calculated move. He doesn't like magicians, doesn't trust them one bit, probably because they never just fight fair like a proper barbarian with a sword and shield. But he can exploit the chaos they create. He can use their unseen war as cover for his very seen intentions. So, as the shadows deepen around the snow-dusted peaks, you can sense a decision has been made, a destination chosen. A dangerous path lies ahead, not because of what Conan is fighting for, but what he intends to take from the aftermath. The next move is his, and it promises to be violent and uncompromising. Get ready for an unsettling road trip, because Conan doesn't do scenic routes. While Conan was busy calculating tactical advantages and mentally sketching out where he'd put his new treasure chest, Vendya's queen, Devi Yasmina, was confronting a far more personal kind of chaos. Remember her from earlier, the formidable ruler we mentioned, not exactly the type to faint at the sight of a chipped nail. Well, she's certainly proving that point now. While her court was paralyzed by suspicion, and her brother, the crown prince, became a living marionette for the Black Circle's sorcerers, Yasmina was not content to merely stew in the royal palace, muttering about how difficult it is to get good help these days. No, our queen is a woman of action, even if that action sometimes verges on the profoundly reckless. She knew that traditional approaches, dispatching royal guards, organizing diplomatic missions, or probably sending very sternly worded letters, simply wouldn't work against an enemy that could turn your most loyal general into a gibbering pro-sorcerer zealot with a mere psychic nudge. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with polite negotiation or even brute force, at least not in the conventional sense. So, driven by a desperate love for her brother and an unwavering duty to her crumbling kingdom, she made a decision that shocked her advisors and probably made a few seasoned palace strategists reach for the strong spirits. She would go herself. Alone. Or well, as close to alone as a queen of Vendya could get. Her journey into the very mountains you're currently imagining yourself to be traversing, the domain of fierce tribes, treacherous ice-slicked passes, and rumored supernatural menaces, was not undertaken with a retinue of bowing servants and luggage carriers. She probably traded her silk gowns for something a bit more practical, like heavy furs and durable leather, more fit for climbing than commanding. Think less red carpet, more muddy boots. Her companions were few, chosen not for their loyalty to the crown, but for their sheer competence and survival skills. You can imagine her leaving the opulent palace under the cloak of night, perhaps slipping past drowsy guards who thought she was just going for an unusually urgent bathroom break. The whispers about her disappearance from the palace would likely contribute to the deepening confusion back in the capital, adding another layer of what the heck is happening to Vendya's already significant problems. Her motivation is pure and singular: rescue Bunda Chand. His increasingly erratic and terrifying behavior had already been whispered through the court, chilling every loyal heart. The prince was not merely ill, he was controlled, a puppet, his own spirit imprisoned within his skull, forced to spout nonsensical commands and disturbing pronouncements that were gradually eroding Vendya's stability. Imagine if your beloved sibling suddenly started reciting the ingredients for a dark potion and declaring Tuesday to be the new national Dress Up Like a Gargoyle Day. You'd probably rush into action too. The authoritative historical fact here is that filial piety and sibling bonds were incredibly strong drivers for political and personal action in many ancient cultures, sometimes even outweighing duty to the state itself, because a family was the state. The perilous journey she undertook is no walk in the park. These Himalayan ranges are unforgiving. You're not just battling freezing temperatures and dizzying altitudes. You're contending with unpredictable rockfalls, hidden crevasses, and the occasional grumpy snow leopard who considers you an unscheduled snack. And then there are the human dangers. Mountain brigands, not unlike our Afghuli friends, who wouldn't think twice about relieving a lone, albeit determined, royal woman of her valuables. Or worse. Plus, let's not forget the Black Circle itself. Their influence might stretch even to these high reaches, creating phantom storms or laying subtle traps for anyone who dares to venture near their territory. It's a miracle she even made it as far as she did, given that she likely had no GPS or satellite phone to call for an Uber. Yasmina herself is formidable in battle, an accomplished swordswoman and rider, a rare quality for a queen in her time. While she commands the largest army in Vendya, she also possesses a keen understanding of tactics and strategy honed over years of study and observation. So this isn't some naive royal flailing around. This is a warrior queen, albeit one facing an enemy far beyond her ken. She probably figured if she could outwit rival warlords and survive courtly intrigue, a few magical tricksters shouldn't be too hard to handle. Oh, how wrong she was. Her lone pursuit into the mountains, driven by desperation and love, was also a desperate gamble. If she failed, not only would her brother remain enslaved, but Vendya would effectively lose its final hope for strong leadership, possibly fracturing into warring provinces. The very silence of the high mountains would seem to amplify her resolve, each crisp breath of icy air reinforcing her desperate purpose. She pushed through the exhaustion, ignoring the growing discomfort in her aching muscles and the persistent cold. You probably wish you had some hot tea and a very fluffy blanket just listening to it, let alone experiencing it. Historians still debate whether an individual's will can truly overcome such overwhelming, systemic forces as supernatural influence, or if circumstances alone dictate fate. But Yasmina isn't interested in philosophical debates. She's too busy trying to keep her toes from freezing off and not falling into a ravine. This solo quest is not just physical. It's a profound act of defiance against a terrifying, invisible foe that threatens everything she holds dear. She isn't just going after a lost family member. She's seeking to sever the very heart of the corruption infecting her realm. An odd or off-topic fact for your journey through perilous mountains. Did you know that the mountain calling, or Berliner Berg phenomenon in the Alps, describes an illusory experience where distant sounds, like cowbells or voices, appear to be closer than they actually are due to unique atmospheric conditions? Imagine Yasmina hearing eerie echoes, only to find nothing there. Or worse, thinking someone was near when it was only the mountain playing tricks on her mind. A bit like your fridge again, just being a nuisance. This desolate landscape could truly make you question your senses. Her journey through these peaks brought her closer and closer to where the Black Circle's sinister power emanated, bringing her into territories the Afghulis had marked with a very wide, very permanent, "Do not disturb" sign. She's approaching the realm of our Cimmerian friend. This brave, desperate queen, utterly alone and beyond hope of immediate aid, was unwittingly charting a course straight into the path of Conan, the barbarian leader who barely tolerates socks, let alone formal royalty. Get ready for some serious culture clash. All right, so Yasmina, our determined queen, is trudging through the frosty, indifferent mountains, probably grumbling about the lack of decent dry cleaning services out here. Conan, meanwhile, is somewhere else in these very same peaks, making plans, probably involving a large map drawn on a tanned hide, wondering where to get the best price for the Vendian crown jewels once he's acquired them. You know, barbarian things. And then it happens, the moment of truth, or rather, the moment of utter bewilderment, mutual suspicion, and perhaps a well-aimed glare or two. Imagine you're hunkered down with the Afghulis, shivering slightly despite the crackling fire, probably just hoping for a second helping of questionable stew. Suddenly, your perimeter guards, not exactly known for their polite invitations, signal a disturbance. They've found a lone figure, and as she's brought forward, perhaps roughly, perhaps with a touch too much mud on her face, it becomes abundantly clear that this is no ordinary mountain vagrant. No, this is royalty, and not just any royalty. The royalty, Devi Yasmina, and she is decidedly not amused. Her bearing, even disheveled, probably radiated an aura that said, "I might be lost, but I can still have you all executed, thank you very much." The initial encounter between Conan and Yasmina is exactly what you'd expect when an unstoppable force of regal indignation meets an immovable object of barbarian indifference. He sees a high-born, haughty woman who has inexplicably strayed into his territory. He probably dismisses her as a fragile, pampered royal, despite the fact that she has survived alone in these deadly mountains for weeks. He's more interested in her potential ransom value, maybe the quality of her fine woolen cloak, than her sob story about a mind-controlled brother. Meanwhile, Yasmina takes one look at this gruff, brawny mountain chieftain leading a band of what are essentially well-organized bandits, and her aristocratic hackles probably rise higher than the Vendian mountains themselves. She probably thinks, "Oh, wonderful, another loud barbarian. Didn't I leave these sorts of annoyances back in the lowlands?" This meeting is inherently volatile. Conan's natural instinct is probably to subjugate, or at least control, anyone who wanders into his path. Yasmina's instinct is to command, or at least explain precisely why she ought to be bowed to. It's less meet-cute and more meet-confrontation where weapons are implied. There's a standoff, a clash of wills, perhaps a bit of shouted accusation. On her part, mostly, as Conan is more of a grunter when vexed. You might think of it like watching two extremely proud, incredibly stubborn people argue over who gets the last slice of pizza, except one of them carries a really big axe, and the other has an army of trained assassins. If only they weren't 300 miles away. The only reason they don't immediately try to kill each other, or worse, try to insult each other into oblivion, is the looming threat of the Black Circle. Yasmina, in her furious explanations, paints a vivid, terrifying picture of the sorcerer's influence, describing the true nature of their psychic manipulations and the horrifying degradation of her brother, Bunda Chand. Conan, pragmatic as ever, likely weighs her words against his own observations. The fear among the Afghulis, the widespread political turmoil he'd observed in Vendia, the sheer oddness of it all. He sees the tangible effects, even if he scoffs at the unseen cause. He probably thinks magic is just a really clever trick until it tries to steal his thoughts. This shared, profoundly dangerous enemy creates the opportunity for an uneasy, strategic alliance. It's not born of trust or camaraderie, it's a marriage of convenience. Yasmina desperately needs strength and knowledge of the mountains to penetrate the sorcerer's strongholds, and perhaps more importantly, protection against an enemy she barely comprehends. Conan needs intelligence about Vendia's vulnerabilities and, frankly, enjoys a good challenge, especially if it promises plunder or increased influence for his tribe. An authoritative historical fact you can lean on here is that many ancient alliances between warring factions were born not out of affection, but mutual strategic necessity against a greater threat. Think of the temporary unions against invading empires, like the various Greek city-states uniting against Persia, even if they often went right back to fighting each other afterwards. Conan agrees to help her, not out of chivalry. He's more likely to scoff at the concept. but because her plight offers a direct path to the heart of the Vendian kingdom's destabilization, which is exactly what he had begun to eye himself. By rescuing her brother, he would both undermine the Black Circle, a new enemy that frankly bugs him because they aren't easy to hit, and secure significant leverage over the Vendian throne. It's a very Conan-esque win-win. He helps Yasmina, who, in turn, inadvertently serves his larger ambitions for influence and perhaps, ultimately, conquest. Historians still debate the degree to which personal relationships versus cold, calculated geopolitics truly drive interstate alliances. But in this case, it's a healthy mix of both. Yasmina recognizes that Conan, despite his barbaric roughness and dubious table manners, possesses a brutal efficacy and an uncanny understanding of warfare that Vendia's traditional armies might lack when facing a non-physical threat. He's exactly the kind of direct, uncompromising blunt instrument needed to clear away magical tricksters. An odd or off-topic fact to consider during this volatile partnership: the shortest recorded war in history was between Britain and Zanzibar in 1896, lasting only 38 minutes. This alliance might not end that quickly, but it definitely feels like it's teetering on the edge of implosion at any moment, as Yasmina likely finds Conan's unfiltered nature profoundly offensive, and Conan likely finds Yasmina's regal demands profoundly tiresome. They probably bond over who can stare longest without blinking, which for Yasmina might be considered polite conversation. So you, the listener, are now a de facto part of this oddball team. You're tagging along with a queen who's probably thinking, if this goes wrong, I blame the barbarian. And a barbarian who's probably thinking, if this goes wrong, I blame the queen, and then perhaps plunder her kingdom anyway. They're not exactly holding hands and skipping through the snowy meadows, but their shared journey has now truly begun, taking you deeper into the heart of the unforgiving Himalayas and closer to the malevolent shadows of the Black Circle. Hold on to your imaginary hats, because things are about to get really, really interesting. All right, buckle up your metaphorical snowshoes, because we're embarking on the least relaxing road trip of your life. The alliance, forged in a furnace of mutual need and extreme awkwardness, means you are now officially part of an elite, dysfunctional mountain trekking team. Our fearless leaders are none other than Conan, the Cimmerian with the subtle charm of a charging rhino, and Queen Devi Yasmina, who still probably gives you the kind of side-eye usually reserved for someone who just parked too close to her chariot. This isn't just a hike, it's a grueling march through some of the most unforgiving terrain known to mankind, or indeed barbarian. You're surrounded by the Afghulis, fierce and nimble in their native habitat, but they're clearly tense. The deeper you venture into these peaks, the more pronounced the signs of the Black Circle's eerie influence become. The usual sounds of the mountains, the whistle of wind, the distant cry of an eagle, the rustle of hidden creatures, are muted, replaced by an unnatural silence. It's the kind of silence that makes your ears ache, making you hyper-aware of your own breathing, like someone forgot to hit play on the Wilderness Ambience soundtrack. Or maybe your inner monologue just started shouting. Whatever it is, it's unsettling. The path ahead is brutal. We're not talking about nicely paved asphalt. You shuffle along narrow, crumbling goat trails carved into sheer rock faces, with a 1,000-foot drop yawning precariously beside you. One misstep, one patch of black ice, and you're no longer part of this narrative. You're merely a very splatted historical footnote. The air grows thinner, colder, stinging your lungs with every breath. Sometimes a gust of wind, laden with invisible icy particles, makes you flinch, feeling like a phantom slap to the face. Remember that uncomfortable silence? Sometimes, even the wind seems to hush, and you feel as though unseen eyes are watching from the towering crags above. It's the mountain telling you, you are a very small, very warm snack. Don't get comfortable. Conan, with his innate sense of direction honed by countless hunts and evasions, takes the lead alongside some of the more experienced Afghuli scouts. He's navigating by instinct, by ancient whispers in the land, by the direction of what little trouble he can already feel brewing. Yasmina, surprisingly agile despite her royal upbringing, moves quickly, determinedly, never complaining. She knows she needs to keep up. Her initial disdain for Conan gradually shifts, not into affection, don't be ridiculous, but into a begrudging respect. She observes his command over the Afghulis, their unspoken communication, his keen eyes that miss nothing, even the smallest detail in a vast, overwhelming landscape. It's like watching a really skilled mountain goat navigate a vertical cliff face. You just can't argue with results. An authoritative historical fact you might find relevant. In many ancient mountain-dwelling cultures, specific hidden trails and passes were indeed closely guarded secrets, known only to a few, and were critical for trade, defense, or retreat. These weren't marked paths, they were learned, observed, and memorized, often passed down through generations. To lead someone through such treacherous terrain without getting lost or ambushed required a profound knowledge of the local ecology and geology, and maybe a little bit of clairvoyance, just to be safe. You start to notice other, more tangible signs of the Black Circle's presence. There are abandoned, desolate camps, not Afghuli camps, but small, oddly sterile clearings where even the birds avoid landing. You might spot strange markings carved into rocks, cryptic symbols that seem to shift and distort in your peripheral vision, hinting at an unknown script or malevolent incantation. The few local inhabitants you encounter in the scattered mountain villages are terrified, their eyes wide with fear, warning you away with frantic gestures, too afraid to speak of the dark sorcerers who now traverse paths previously untouched by their shadow. They probably tried to offer you very bland bread and mumbled prayers. One of the more memorable points of debate within the academic circles that study Howard's work, and ancient cultures in general, is whether certain geographic areas genuinely became associated with specific magical or supernatural phenomena over time, or if these beliefs were primarily societal constructs reflecting fear and superstition. You're definitely experiencing the intersection of both here. This mountain range, with its unique atmosphere and its truly hidden, inaccessible enclaves, feels like it could birth strange powers, and the Black Circle, for their part, have chosen their home well, picking places already steeped in unease. There's an almost imperceptible pressure on your mind, a faint hum that settles behind your ears, making you feel vaguely agitated, perhaps a little lightheaded, or unusually pessimistic. It's like your brain is trying to tune into a very specific, very unwelcome radio station, and it's always just a little bit out of sync. This is the subtle manifestation of the sorcerer's influence, a quiet distortion that grows stronger the closer you get to their secret domains. You probably want to check your phone to see if you have service, but let's be real, you wouldn't get a single bar up here. Maybe you feel a sudden intense craving for obscure cheeses or an inexplicable desire to argue with a tree. It's the subtle manipulation trying to get into your head before they ramp up to full-blown visions of angry badgers. Occasionally, Conan lets slip a grumbled curse, something about these wizardly fops making honest brigandage more difficult. Yasmina, still dignified, will sometimes offer practical advice about identifying flora for trail markers, or perhaps noting certain wind patterns indicative of coming weather changes, displaying a knowledge that belies her perceived pampered upbringing. You almost see them sharing a quiet moment, a flash of grudging mutual respect, like two rival professional wrestlers briefly acknowledging each other's grappling skills before trying to hit each other with a chair again. Almost. Mostly they just seem to tolerate each other for the mission's sake. An odd or off-topic fact to briefly distract you from the bone-chilling dread. Did you know that some high-altitude cultures historically used specific animal droppings, like those of yaks, not just for fuel, but also sometimes as insulation material for shelters? If you smell something faintly pungent, it's not just you. This land forces extreme pragmatism, just like the crock poop sunscreen we mentioned. Don't judge too quickly. Everything here is about survival, even if it smells a bit. The trek is long, grueling, and punctuated by hushed conversations, shared hardships, and perhaps the occasional dry joke from a weary Afghuli about Conan's endless appetite for, well, anything that isn't green. As you crest a particularly high ridge, a sudden frigid gust of wind whips around you, carrying with it a distinct, unpleasantly metallic smell, almost like stagnant water mixed with ancient rust. Below, nestled amidst the twisted ancient rock formations and dark shadows, you finally spot it. Not a warm, welcoming lodge, but a structure that seems to cling to the very rock face like a cancerous growth. It's too dark, too angular, too wrong. It's the lair, the hidden stronghold, the secret domain of the Black Circle, the end of the climb, and the beginning of the real terror. You take one last gulp of thin, icy air, knowing you probably won't breathe easy for a while. Well, here we are, at the doorstep of ultimate creepiness. You've braved the mountains, dodged the frostbite, and managed not to fall off any precarious ledges. Good for you! But the sense of relief you thought you'd feel at finally seeing the Black Circle's stronghold? Poof! Gone. Replaced by a cold, tingling unease that wraps around you like a particularly persistent ghost. We're not talking about a cozy cabin in the woods. This place radiates bad vibes like a teenager radiates angst. As you get closer to the sorcerer's lair, you feel it even more intensely. A low thrumming in your bones. A sense of foreboding that probably feels worse than when you realize you accidentally hit reply all on an email meant for one person. Your first proper confrontation with the Black Circle's agents is, as promised, anything but straightforward. You're not just dealing with pointy-hatted wizards zapping lightning from their fingertips. These guys are next level, using mind-bending tricks that would make a master illusionist scratch their head in wonder and maybe look for a new career. Imagine trying to fight a fog bank that keeps whispering your darkest fears to you, while occasionally shape-shifting into your slightly judgmental aunt. Not easy. The Afghulis, with their sharp instincts for physical danger, are utterly flummoxed. Their blades seem to slice through empty air, their arrows pass harmlessly through phantom figures, and their war cries echo back at them, warped and mocking. You might see a shadowy figure lurking behind a rock, only for it to shimmer and fade when you try to focus on it. Or perhaps a familiar voice calls out to you from a deceptive patch of mist, sounding like one of your companions, drawing you off the main path, only for you to find yourself disoriented and alone. It's like watching a magic show where the magician genuinely tries to trick you into falling off a cliff. Conan, our hero who believes in the blunt simplicity of an axe, is visibly irritated. He probably grumbles something about cowardly conjurers who don't have the decency to stand still and get hit. His strength and warrior instincts are being tested by an enemy that cannot be simply battered into submission. He slashes, he lunges, he roars, but it's like fighting phantoms made of nightmares. It's enough to make even him consider whether he should have perhaps picked up a textbook on arcane arts instead of another battle axe. The specific type of sorcery employed here involves sinister illusions, warped perceptions, and powerful suggestion. They don't just show you what isn't there, they prevent you from being what is there. They might conjure the image of a wall of fire to block your path, while the real path is subtly veiled behind it. Or they could make a sheer cliff face appear as a welcoming meadow, a truly nasty surprise for an unwary hiker. The air shimmers, not from heat, but from distorting energies. Your sense of balance is thrown off. Even your sense of time feels fluid. It's the ultimate psychological warfare, weaponizing your own brain against you. You suddenly might forget what you had for breakfast and wonder if your right sock has been on your left foot the whole time. Queen Yasmina, ever the pragmatist, finds her keen intellect struggling. She's used to identifying deception through courtly intrigue and political doublespeak, but this is a different beast entirely. She might spot inconsistencies in the illusions, tiny flaws that hint at the manipulation, but even her sharpness can't fully counteract the sheer force of the sorcery. She looks at Conan, a flash of frustration in her eyes, probably thinking, "Okay, barbarian, this is where your brute force isn't quite cutting it. Now what?" An authoritative historical fact you might be interested in. Many ancient cultures had detailed mythologies involving illusions, glamours, and perception-altering magic, particularly in folk tales about fairies, spirits, or vengeful deities. The idea that powerful beings could trick human senses and warp reality has a long and persistent presence in global storytelling, well beyond a particular pulp fantasy writer. The psychological toll on the Afghulis is particularly high. These men are accustomed to physical threats. They can see them, fight them. But this unseen enemy that attacks their very minds, it's profoundly demoralizing. You see seasoned warriors who have faced down tigers and warring clans without flinching, visibly shaking, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. A brave warrior might suddenly scream, believing a loved one has turned into a monstrous spider, or a trusted companion is an enemy agent. It's mental anguish on a level most people never experience, and certainly wouldn't wish to. Historians still debate the extent to which battlefield hallucinations or fear-induced breakdowns were exploited in ancient warfare. Some theories suggest strategic psychological torment was more common than previously thought. This is definitely on that spectrum. What sets Conan apart here? His infamous pragmatism and simple, almost brutish directness. He trusts his instincts, his Sumerian sixth sense, and his immediate perception of physical reality above all else. He may not understand the intricacies of magic, but he instinctively rejects anything that doesn't feel real to his blunt, practical senses. If a shadow figure vanishes when he rushes it, he doesn't try to intellectualize. He figures it wasn't there to begin with, and just moves past where it was. If a wall of fire looks too perfect, too static, he assumes it's not real, and just blunders through, often dispelling the illusion by his sheer refusal to acknowledge its existence. It's the ultimate form of ignorance is bliss, meeting an existential threat. He's not immune, but his refusal to believe allows him to resist in ways more complex minds cannot. He probably just assumes he's a very unobservant person, which sometimes works in his favor. An odd or off-topic fact that might make you chuckle: the term déjà vu literally translates from French as already seen. Imagine dealing with these sorcerers, where every moment could feel like déjà vu, or not déjà vu enough, pas encore vu, if they're playing truly evil tricks with your memory and perception. It would certainly add to the confusion. You might also briefly forget why you were listening to this in the first place, or if you even exist. The Black Circle, secure in their eerie lair, must have assumed their mental tricks would either drive away these intruders or break their spirits. They severely underestimated the simple, bull-headed refusal of Conan to play by their rules and the stubborn resolve of a queen. Driven by vengeance and love, they are starting to understand that brute force, applied with enough single-minded conviction, can sometimes break through even the most intricate of illusions. The real confrontation, however, is yet to come. They've tasted the edge of Conan's determination, and it probably feels a lot like cold, hard steel. You take a breath, feeling the faint, unnatural buzzing in your head, and brace yourself. This is only the appetizer, and the main course promises to be unpleasant. So, you've battled the phantom figures, scraped past the illusory pitfalls, and probably convinced yourself you really did see a sentient rock offering investment advice. Don't worry, it was just the Black Circle's psychological warfare kicking in, preparing you for the main event. Now, standing on a desolate ridge, wind whipping around you like an angry specter, you finally behold it. The formidable, magically veiled fortress of the Black Circle. It's not what you'd expect. Forget your picture postcard castles with neatly crenellated towers and flags flapping merrily in the breeze. This is a monument to sinister functionality. Carved into the very heart of the Himalayan rock, the fortress seems less built and more exuded from the mountain itself, like some monstrous geological fungus. Its dark, unyielding stone blends almost perfectly with the somber gray of the crags, making it practically invisible until you're right upon it. It's as if an entire peak decided to transform into a grumpy, defensive sentinel. Whoever designed this place definitely wasn't looking for compliments on its curb appeal, unless your taste runs to malignant granite fortress chic. The eerie aura radiating from the stronghold isn't just psychological, it's almost palpable. The air around it is colder, somehow thinner, and laden with a subtle acrid tang, like ozone, mixed with something that's been forgotten in the back of a very old, very moldy cupboard. The very light seems to bend as it nears the walls, distorting perceptions, making distances uncertain. You might glance at a tower, and for a fleeting moment it seems too impossibly tall, stretching endlessly into the bleak sky, before shrinking back to merely terrifyingly large. Then you look again, and it appears to shimmer, momentarily blurring at the edges, as if refusing to fully reveal itself to your gaze. It's like looking at one of those optical illusion posters that gives you a headache if you stare at it too long, except this one has pointy bits that could genuinely impale you. This magical veil isn't just a cloak of invisibility. It's an active, insidious defense. It warps the sound so that your shouted warnings might be swallowed by an unnatural silence or echo back at you, eerily twisted into unrecognizable words. The contours of the rock face shift in your peripheral vision, making the approach disorienting and treacherous. Paths that seemed clear moments ago might disappear, replaced by sheer drops or impenetrable rock. It's the ultimate, "Are you sure you want to go this way?" signage, only much more effective and potentially lethal. This isn't a moat you can swim or a drawbridge you can lower. This is a reality-bending headache on a massive scale. Conan, with his practical eyes and stubborn disbelief, probably grumbles that it's too much trouble for a few old wizards. He still tries to perceive things physically, trusting the feel of the ground beneath his boots and the reality of the cold wind on his face. Yasmina, however, is likely recognizing the true, formidable nature of her enemy. Her courtly intellect, trained to decipher complex diplomatic strategies and intricate battle plans, is grappling with a foe that defies all conventional logic. She can see the logic of the defenses, the strategic placements of what she can see, but she's constantly second-guessing her senses, like a chess master suddenly faced with a board where the pieces randomly decide to swap places. An authoritative historical fact here. Many ancient mountain fortresses throughout the world, from those in the Alps to the fortresses of Persia, like Alamut of the Assassins, deliberately integrated their structures with natural geological features, using cliff faces, deep gorges, and treacherous terrain as their primary defenses. Some even involved extensive cave systems or rock-cut passages, making them extremely difficult to besiege by conventional means. This fortress takes that natural advantage and cranks it up to 11, with an added layer of reality-bending magic. The fortress's defenses are layered. Beyond the perceptual distortion caused by the magical veil, there are also cleverly placed physical obstacles. Natural rockfalls, disguised traps that appear to be just loose scree, and cunningly hidden choke points would funnel any attackers into killing zones. But instead of archers, you're mostly facing the unseen hands of the Black Circle, prepared to unleash a barrage of mind-rending fear, terrifying illusions, or soul-draining despair. Imagine being convinced your axe has turned into a fluffy bunny, or that your friends are now wearing incredibly ugly hats. It's disruptive, to say the least. Historians still debate how much superstition influenced the effectiveness of ancient defensive architecture. Did stories of curses or strange phenomena genuinely deter attackers, or were they simply convenient cover for brilliant engineering and tactical placement? In this case, you can be fairly certain it's both. A truly clever architectural marvel, amplified by genuinely disturbing supernatural phenomena. One particular odd or off-topic fact that pops into your mind as you observe the stronghold. Did you know that the whispering gallery phenomenon, found in certain domed buildings, like St. Paul's Cathedral in London or the Capitol Building in Washington, D.C., allows a whisper along one wall to be heard perfectly on the opposite side? Imagine that effect amplified by sorcery in this fortress, where the whispers are not secrets of science, but chilling promises of torment from unseen guardians, carrying just your particular, most embarrassing secret across the courtyard. It certainly wouldn't help your mental state before battle. You're watching your Afghuli companions. Their usual fearless demeanor is frayed at the edges. They look uncomfortable, restless, and occasionally twitch as if shaking off an unseen spiderweb. Even Conan, despite his outward indifference, can feel the constant, irritating hum of unnatural energy pressing in on him. It's like having a pebble in your boot, only the pebble is trying to convince you that all your life choices were profoundly terrible. This steady, unnerving presence suggests a powerful concentration of black circle sorcerers within the stronghold. They're not just visitors, they are the heart and soul of this malevolent place. As you draw closer, seeking any chink in this eerie armor, the air grows thick, heavy, as if the mountain itself is holding its breath. The oppressive silence gives way to a low, barely perceptible throb that seems to pulse from the very rock. You realize this is the beating heart of their evil, the very source of the mind-bending influence. You swallow hard, feeling your own pulse quicken. The journey has ended, but the real infiltration, the actual descent into this shadowy fortress, has only just begun. What lies within those twisting passages and dark chambers? Something far worse than bad architecture, undoubtedly. You shiver, despite the layered clothing, as you follow Conan's grim figure toward the unyielding stone. Okay, the creepy castle carved out of the mountain is no longer just a distant, menacing silhouette. Now, you're inside. You've bypassed the invisible walls, stumbled through the flickering illusions, and probably tried to have a polite conversation with what turned out to be just a very grumpy stalactite. You and the others have found a way in, perhaps through a cleverly disguised natural cavern, or by Conan, simply being too stubborn and big to be tricked by flimsy visual trickery. Either way, you've crossed the threshold, and let me tell you, it smells less like roses and more like ancient secrets and unwashed socks, or perhaps a very old gym shoe mixed with something indescribably wrong. As you step into the gloomy interior, the first thing that hits you isn't a magical trap, but the atmosphere. It's heavy, suffocating, as if the very air itself is compressed by years of unbroken horrors. The walls drip with condensation, but the chill isn't merely from the damp rock, it's a soul-deep cold. Light sources, where they exist, are infrequent and weak, casting long, distorted shadows that dance and writhe as you move, turning familiar figures into monstrous caricatures. This isn't the kind of place where you leave cookies out for Santa. This is the kind of place where you desperately wish you'd worn thicker thermal underwear. Your infiltration deep into the citadel feels like walking through a nightmare-given stone form. The passages twist and turn without logic, seemingly designed to disorient and confuse. Echoes of your footsteps are distorted, seeming to come from ahead, behind, and even directly beneath you. The faint hum in your skull intensifies, occasionally punctuated by sharp, intrusive thoughts that aren't your own. Flashes of terror, fleeting images of torment, the feeling that someone is peeling an invisible onion inside your mind. You instinctively try to swat them away, like particularly annoying gnats, but they linger, just beyond the grasp of your conscious thought. It's enough to make you wish you had brought a giant foam bat for stress relief. You begin to find tangible evidence of the Black Circle's rituals. The first sign might be faint, indecipherable chants echoing from deep within the rock, chilling and strangely discordant. Then you see symbols carved into the stone walls, not just simple graffiti, but elaborate, intricate patterns that pulse with a faint internal light, occasionally swirling into mesmerizing hypnotic fractals before snapping back into static forms. Some of these glyphs seem to writhe, subtly altering their shape the longer you stare at them, almost as if they are living things struggling to break free from the rock. There are strange, ancient altars adorned with obscure carvings and residues that you definitely don't want to lick. One room might hold shimmering pools of black, viscous liquid that seem to absorb all light, while another might contain rows of chillingly precise anatomical drawings or arcane texts bound in what feels suspiciously like human skin. It's clear that these aren't just parlor tricks for a birthday party. These are the tools of ancient, forgotten evils. The Black Circle aren't just meddling. They are delving into cosmic horror, tapping into powers far beyond mortal comprehension, much like your friend who buys that super cheap gadget online, and it inevitably tries to enslave your whole house. Their rituals focus on drawing sustenance, or power, from something beyond the known dimensions, perhaps even sacrificing pieces of their own souls, or rather, other people's souls, to achieve their horrifying aims. The air crackles with unnatural energy, so potent it makes the hairs on your arms stand on end, a mixture of arcane discharge and something vaguely electrical, like a very dusty, very malevolent old supercomputer whirring away in the next room. The ultimate, nefarious purpose of the Black Circle begins to reveal itself. It's not just about dominating Vendia, though that is a stepping stone. No, their true aim is far grander, far more disturbing. They seek to unravel the fabric of reality itself. They aren't just puppet masters, they are architects of ultimate cosmic change. They want to tear open the veil between dimensions, allowing something unspeakable, something beyond human ken, to cross over into our world. Imagine accidentally ripping a hole in the universe just to prove a point. They want to invite entities whose very presence would induce madness, entities whose names might be spoken in hushed tones only in ancient, forbidden texts. Their goal is nothing short of establishing a new, grotesque world order, built on terror and chaos, ruled by cosmic powers. The influence they've exerted on Bunda Chand was just a small-scale experiment, a proof of concept. The entire kingdom was to be a sacrificial offering, the first step towards a universal redecoration that involved rather more eldritch tentacled horrors than is generally considered tasteful. An authoritative historical fact that might give you some pause. Many ancient mystery cults and philosophical traditions explored the concept of transcending perceived reality or breaking through illusions, though their goals were typically enlightenment, not cosmic destruction. The idea that knowledge of hidden dimensions could grant immense power has persisted through millennia, from Gnostic sects to various alchemical traditions. These sorcerers just got the power part terribly wrong, and skipped the enlightenment part entirely. As you navigate the twisting corridors, you become aware that certain chambers resonate with particular disturbing energies. Some might vibrate with the presence of immense, unseen hunger. Others might emanate waves of pure, unadulterated dread. You might stumble upon an empty chamber where the silence is so profound it feels like a physical weight, pressing in on your eardrums, or where the air suddenly tastes like ancient rust and something burnt. It's as if different rituals have stained different parts of the stronghold, each leaving its unique residue of unholy influence. Historians still debate the specific motivations for certain historical cults that sought to evoke otherworldly entities, often distinguishing between those seeking personal spiritual advancement and those with more destructive dominion-seeking goals. These guys are clearly in the latter category. One odd or off-topic fact that might make you oddly curious. The human eye can theoretically detect a single photon of light. In a place like this, however, where illusions reign and light bends unnaturally, you might wonder if what you're seeing is actually there at all, or if your incredibly sensitive eyes are being fooled into perceiving light from places it simply shouldn't exist, twisting reality until your vision makes less sense than a politician's promise. Conan, surprisingly, is not just relying on brute force here. His instincts are honed for threats of any kind, and while he may not understand the metaphysics of a planar rift, he knows a concentrated evil when he smells it. He doesn't interpret the strange symbols, but he recognizes their malevolent intent. He leads you, often relying on his raw intuition, a visceral aversion to certain wrong pathways, and a remarkable ability to sense the subtle shift in magical pressures. Yasmina, on the other hand, is trying to intellectually dissect the sorcery, reading the cryptic writings, connecting the horrifying dots between the scattered remnants of rituals and the eventual apocalyptic conclusion. Her face is grim, pale. She had no idea the scope of their nefarious intentions. She thought they just wanted her brother for a quick prank. It turns out they want him to be the opening act for the end of the world. The stench of decay, the unsettling whispers that cling to the air like stale perfume, the low, almost imperceptible hum that feels like a tuning fork vibrating against your very teeth. All of it culminates in a chilling realization. This stronghold isn't just a hideout. It's a massive ritual site. Every stone, every chamber, every twisted passageway is part of a colossal, ongoing ceremony meant to bring forth forces beyond the comprehension of ordinary mortals. The more you explore, the more profound and disturbing their agenda becomes. And your sense of urgency grows, because every second spent exploring is a second closer to their vile plans reaching fruition. This is a truly, profoundly bad place, and you know deep down that you are merely moments away from discovering their ultimate sacrificial chamber, where something truly unsettling will be happening to Bunda Chand. You can almost taste the fear in the air, a metallic, lingering tang on your tongue. Okay, so you're deeper into the belly of the beast now, practically wallpapered by evil magic and bad air. You've walked through rooms that smell of ancient, unspeakable things, and probably have lingering nightmares of sentient frescoes. Your heart's probably beating like a trapped hummingbird, because after all the mind-bending illusions and whispered threats, you know you're finally getting close to what Conan and Yasmina came for. Bunda Chand, the Vendian prince, who's currently doing an involuntary impression of a living puppet. The search for the prince within this twisted labyrinth is fraught with new dangers. The Black Circle guards aren't just your standard bumbling henchmen. They move like wraiths, strike from unexpected angles, and their faces are often concealed behind hoods or masks, or simply wrongly angled, hinting at distorted physiognomy. These aren't just human guards. They're either deeply indoctrinated fanatics or something far more unsettling, their wills entirely subsumed by the sorcerer's influence. They're like office workers on a Monday morning after their favorite coffee shop ran out of almond milk, disturbingly single-minded and possibly homicidal. Their weapons seem to cut deeper, and their attacks feel strangely draining. Finally, after navigating more reality-bending corridors that probably violate at least 3 laws of physics and several architectural guidelines, you find him. Bunda Chand, not in a royal chamber. No, that would be far too civilized. He's found in a chamber pulsing with that nauseating hum you've become accustomed to, the air thick and electric with dark energy. It's a room clearly dedicated to ritual, with strange arcane symbols etched into the floor, some faintly glowing with an unwholesome light. And in the center, bound to an ancient, dark stone altar, is the prince. But this isn't the robust, if a little naive, prince you'd imagine. He's withered, pale, his eyes wide and vacant, occasionally rolling upwards in an unsettling manner. He's babbling, but his words are nonsensical, a stream of ancient, guttural incantations, terrifying gibberish, and bursts of his own royal name mixed with grotesque descriptions of alien landscapes. It's like watching a broken record, only the record is screaming. It's horrifying, frankly. He might twitch, flail, or let out an ear-splitting shriek, a primal cry of agony and terror, despite no visible wounds. You realize he's been reduced to a conduit, a vessel, through which the Black Circle is channeling their nefarious energies for their ultimate plan. It's truly soul-crushing to witness. Yasmina rushes to her brother, her initial cries of grief and despair quickly hardening into grim resolve. She probably brushes past the residual magical interference with a fury that surprises even Conan, fueled by pure sibling love. But there's no denying the horror etched onto Bunda Chan's face, a horror far deeper than mere physical pain. The sorcerer's magic hasn't merely taken his physical freedom, it has warped his mind, frayed his sanity, and perhaps even taken a bite out of his very soul. It's not an elegant solution, but it's definitely effective if your goal is psychological devastation. You feel a pang of sympathy, mixed with a profound urge to burn the entire fortress down and then perhaps take a very long, very hot shower. The toll taken on Bunda Chan's mind is chilling. He barely recognizes Yasmina, flickering between brief moments of terrified lucidity and long stretches of madness. He might scream her name, tears streaming down his face, then immediately launch into a monologue about the delicious taste of stars or the proper way to sacrifice a nebula. His short-term memory seems scrambled, his long-term memories warped and unreliable. He's no longer the noble prince, but a fractured shadow, an echo of himself. The sorcerers aren't just using him, they are destroying him, piece by agonizing piece. An authoritative historical fact regarding mental health in ancient contexts. While sophisticated psychological diagnosis and treatment were not recognized as they are today, many ancient cultures attributed mental affliction to demonic possession, divine punishment, or spiritual imbalance. This explains the terrifying power the Black Circle wielded, as the populace would instinctively believe a victim like Bunda Chand to be cursed or demonically influenced, making them feared and avoided rather than medically treated. The realization hits you. Even if they rescue him, Bunda Chand might never be truly whole again. This isn't like fixing a broken arm. This is patching up a torn soul. This truth gnaws at Yasmina, strengthening her resolve for vengeance against the sorcerers. Conan, for his part, sees it as clear evidence of the depravity of the enemy, and frankly, makes him want to smash things even more effectively. He has a simple solution to difficult problems involving beating the madness out of something, but even he senses this is beyond his usual direct approach. Historians still debate the efficacy of various ancient healing practices for mental affliction, ranging from herbal remedies to ritual exorcisms. Unfortunately, none of those would likely suffice for Bunda Chand. The extent of the psychic damage from such insidious manipulation could potentially be irreversible. An odd or off-topic fact to briefly pull you from the heavy mood. Did you know that laughter, in excessive or uncontrolled bursts, has been reported in rare neurological conditions as a type of seizure or as part of a syndrome, like Angelman syndrome? Imagine poor Bunda Chand occasionally bursting into fits of hysterical, inappropriate laughter that rings eerily in the gloomy chamber, or perhaps uncontrollable sobbing. It just adds another layer of disquiet to an already deeply tragic scene. Their rescue is more akin to extracting a plant that has been deliberately intertwined with invasive poisonous vines. It's not quick, it's messy, and it's desperately, dangerously close to the Black Circle's true core of power. As the bindings are loosened and the rituals disturbed, the fortress itself seems to sense their violation. The low hum deepens, a warning thrum, and the very walls might vibrate with suppressed rage. It feels like waking up an ancient, incredibly grumpy sleeping beast by poking it repeatedly with a stick. You have the prince, or what's left of him, but you've also announced your presence in a big way. The main architect of all this misery will not be far behind. Your very bones seem to buzz with anticipation because you know who's next. All right, you've managed to liberate Bunda Chand from his mind-rending prison, leaving behind a chamber that's now probably spitting and fizzing with residual bad magic, like a short-circuited cauldron. But that act of defiance, the tearing apart of their insidious ritual, was essentially ringing the dinner bell for the chief cook and bottle washer of this whole nightmarish operation. You didn't just annoy them, you stepped on their most important, darkest, magical toes. And now, the true puppet master has taken notice. Your path now leads you deeper into the heart of the fortress, to the central chamber that thrums with an almost unbearable density of dark energy. This is where the head of the snake resides, the one orchestrating the mental corrosion of Vendia, the enslavement of the prince, and the terrifying machinations that aim to tear apart the very fabric of your world. And as you step into the enormous shadow-choked hall, you see them. No, not them in plural, but them singular, because this is the leader of the Black Circle, or more precisely, one of the leaders, because this group often operates with several powerful figures working in tandem, though one always reigns supreme. This one in particular is an older figure, shrouded in the customary dark robes, face partially obscured by a hood and the deeper shadows of the chamber. But even what you can see, glints of ancient, piercing eyes, thin lips twisted into an unnervingly calm, almost academic smile, suggests immense, patient malevolence. This is not some raving lunatic. This is a master of their craft, refined and terrifyingly self-possessed. They glide rather than walk, as if not quite beholden to gravity. Their voice, when they finally speak, is a low, hypnotic rumble that seems to bypass your ears and vibrate directly within your skull, echoing with the authority of someone who's had far too much control over other people's dreams. It's like a very, very old evil ASMR video. Their hands, visible when they subtly gesture, are long and thin, tipped with strangely discolored nails, moving with the slow, deliberate grace of a predatory animal contemplating its prey. Every gesture feels laden with unspoken threat. The atmosphere in the chamber intensifies to an almost unbearable level. The humming sound is now a roar. The air feels viscous, like breathing underwater, and spectral visions begin to dance at the very edge of your periphery. The room might subtly twist and morph around you, causing your stomach to lurch. For Conan, who likely expected a straightforward punch-up, this psychological bombardment is a unique kind of infuriating. He doesn't deal in veiled threats, he deals in blunt ones. The leader, sensing this, likely uses their arcane power to try and push Conan back, perhaps assaulting him with vivid, mind-numbing images or implanting waves of debilitating despair. Maybe they show him a vision of a world without strong mead. Unthinkable. Yasmina stands beside Conan, outwardly stoic, but her mind is working furiously, trying to understand the full extent of this sorcerer's power, desperately seeking a weakness or a flaw in their mesmerizing display. She's seen the terrible cost of this magic firsthand, reflected in her brother's shattered mind. Her grief and fury are cold steel, empowering her resolve. She's done being merely analytical. She's ready for the fight. An authoritative historical fact regarding powerful leaders in ancient, particularly Eastern societies. Often, true power was exerted not through direct physical display or command, but through the cultivation of an aura of impenetrable mystique, philosophical insight, and hidden knowledge, allowing them to exert immense influence without ever raising their voice or their sword. This Black Circle leader has clearly mastered that subtle yet overwhelming form of command. This climactic clash is not merely a physical confrontation. It's a battle of wills, a struggle between primal barbarian strength, tempered by a surprising immunity to illusion, and ancient, cunning arcane power that delights in unraveling sanity. Conan isn't just bringing a sword to a magic fight. He's bringing a brain that utterly rejects the premise of magic to a magic fight, which is almost as effective as having magic yourself. The sorcerer's illusions probably bounce off Conan's practical Sumerian brain like tiny, annoying, invisible mosquitoes. Historians still debate the extent to which powerful individuals throughout history were believed to possess supernatural charisma or mind control abilities, attributing their influence to more than just military prowess or political acumen. In this fictional world, of course, that supernatural charisma is terrifyingly real. An odd or off-topic fact that makes you question things. The human brain, particularly the occipital lobe, processes visual information. Damage or stimulation to specific parts of it can induce complex visual hallucinations. You wonder if this sorcerer knows how to directly stimulate those parts of your brain, making you hallucinate everything from giant dancing teacups to armies of invisible unicorns. Or worse, the terrifying sight of your own laundry pile, demanding to be folded. The real horror. The leader's ultimate weapon is not raw power, it is psychological terror. They try to plant doubts, amplify fears, create division, make your friends look like monstrous entities ready to tear you apart. For the Afghulis, already on edge, this is devastating. They might briefly turn on each other or stand frozen in a panic, their minds paralyzed by induced terror. This leaves Conan and Yasmina to face the insidious might head-on. Yasmina will wield her own blade, striking at fleeting apparitions, trying to maintain her focus. Conan will charge forward, driven by an almost primal rage against the trickery, his axe held high, embodying raw, undeniable, uncomplicated force. This is the turning point, the heart of the Black Circle's operations. The master orchestrator. To defeat them isn't just about severing the physical threat. It's about breaking their will, dispelling their grand illusion of power, and if you're lucky, shattering the very essence of their reality. Bending sorcery. The air crackles, the very stones vibrate, and a deep, guttural sound, not unlike an earth-shaking sigh of exasperation, seems to emanate from the leader themselves. They probably just realize they've picked the wrong barbarians to mess with today. Prepare for a climactic showdown, because your destiny, and Vendya's, is about to be forged in a clash between steel and spectral might. You're right there, standing eyeball to. Well, somewhere behind that hood, the leader of the Black Circle, an incredibly self-possessed sorcerer with unnervingly calm eyes, stands before you. And you might be thinking, great, a wizard duel, lasers, fireballs, exploding chickens. But you'd be sorely disappointed, because this is different. This isn't your flashy elemental magic. This is far more subtle, and honestly, far more terrifying. This section focuses on peeling back the layers of how this particular flavor of sorcery messes with your head, rather than simply blowing things up. The Black Circle's true power lies in their mastery of the mind. They're not just illusionists, not just tricksters. They are psychological warfare experts on a cosmic level. Their magic, while seeming ethereal, is a direct assault on your perceptions, your memories, your emotions, and ultimately, your free will. Imagine your brain isn't just a squishy organ. It's a meticulously crafted digital fortress, and they have the universal skeleton key, except they don't just open the door. They rearrange all your furniture, delete half your files, and then leave a polite but incredibly unsettling note telling you that you actually enjoy it. They excel in suggestion and implanted thoughts. They don't just make you see a monster, they make you believe you are the monster. Or perhaps they make you believe your closest companion is actually a treacherous demon in disguise, eager to sell your prized pet hamster to a sketchy stranger. The confusion isn't about mistaking a shadow for a person. It's about suddenly distrusting your own reflections. This isn't subtle manipulation. This is mind-numbing dread served with a side of utter self-doubt. You might experience waves of profound sadness, inexplicable rage, or intense paranoia that isn't connected to anything you've personally witnessed. It's the emotional equivalent of someone randomly pressing buttons on your internal emotional control panel. For most people, even battle-hardened warriors like the Afghulis, this is devastating. Their courage, their will to fight, is directly linked to their perception of reality and their sense of self. When those pillars are undermined, they falter. A seasoned fighter, confident in his blade, suddenly questions if his blade is real or if he is even there to wield it. Fear and madness spread through their ranks not as a physical disease, but as a psychic virus, twisting their reality into a waking nightmare. You're starting to understand why poor Bunda Chand ended up gibbering. But Conan, our pragmatic Cimmerian, possesses a unique resistance to this form of mental attack. It's not a magical resistance, He's no sorcerer himself. It's more fundamental, almost primal. Conan operates on a very direct, uncomplicated, and physically driven perception of reality. He trusts his instincts, his brute force, and what he can physically smash. He doesn't delve into introspection, self-doubt, or the philosophical implications of his existence. If something can't be cut, grappled, or smashed, he mentally categorizes it as irrelevant annoying noise or trickery. So, his mind is not easily swayed by intricate deceptions because it's so singularly focused on the immediate, tangible moment. He's less concerned with subtle emotional nuances and more with the optimal angle to deliver a crippling blow. He sees a shimmering illusion, recognizes it as a trick because it just doesn't feel right to his animal senses, and simply tries to walk through it or smash the air where it appeared. An authoritative historical fact here. Throughout history, individuals or cultures with a strong practical bent and a low emphasis on abstract philosophical thinking were often less susceptible to propaganda or complex deceptions that relied on manipulating intricate beliefs or social norms. Conan's simple mind, far from being a weakness, becomes a powerful accidental shield against the Black Circle's psychological warfare. He's like the analog radio in a digital age. It's immune to hacking because it's not trying to run any fancy operating system. Yasmina, on the other hand, is susceptible. Her mind is trained to be intricate, analytical, capable of parsing layers of meaning and nuance. This makes her particularly vulnerable to the subtle attacks. She can see the cleverness of their sorcery, the terrifying depth of their understanding of the human psyche, and this intellectual recognition makes it harder for her to resist. She feels the insidious probes, the cold fingers trying to unravel her mind, and must actively fight it, whereas Conan is largely ignoring it because it doesn't directly offer him a physical threat or a decent bar to loot. Historians still debate the true nature of what might be termed psychic resilience in ancient accounts of individuals surviving extreme mental or emotional duress. Was it simply stronger mental fortitude, or something more ingrained and cultural? Conan's immunity leans towards the latter, a natural byproduct of his untamed upbringing. One particular odd or off-topic fact that might make you ponder the fragility of the mind. Did you know that Capgras syndrome is a real neurological condition where a person believes that a familiar person, or sometimes an object or pet, has been replaced by an identical imposter? Imagine facing the Black Circle sorcerer, and suddenly everyone around you, even Conan, feels like a remarkably accurate but deeply disturbing body double. Now that's a bad day at the office. The clash is not just a fight, it's a contest to break their very source of power, their control over minds. Conan's blunt resistance forces the sorcerer to escalate their efforts, abandoning subtlety for more overt, if still psychologically rooted, attacks. They realize that simple suggestion won't work on the Cimmerian. They have to try to actively induce psychosis, warp his direct senses, or overload his brain with contradictory signals. This forces them to focus on him, creating openings that Yasmina, or the remaining functional Afghulis, can exploit. His sheer physical presence, combined with his peculiar brand of mental imperviousness, acts like a magnet for their attention, diverting it from their main objectives. He's an uncooperative, incredibly large, emotionally stunted, mental lightning rod. The leader's calm demeanor might waver as they try to twist Conan's perception and find him unyielding. There's a flicker of genuine frustration, perhaps even a brief, rare flash of raw rage in their ancient eyes. They probably expected him to collapse into a weeping, gibbering mess like all the others. But Conan just stares back, axe ready, patiently waiting for something that can actually be hit. The sorcerer begins to pour more and more energy into trying to overwhelm him, drawing on powers that crackle with latent dark fire, revealing their true desperation to stop this unstoppable, annoying force of nature. This confrontation isn't just about defeating the Black Circle. It's about watching a man who refuses to be fooled tear down the ultimate psychological fort. And for the listener, it's going to be utterly brutal and oddly satisfying. All right, No more subtly twisted realities or existential brain itching. We're at the business end of things. Conan, bless his straightforward heart, is about to bring a world of blunt force trauma to a metaphysical knife fight. The leader of the Black Circle, exasperated and increasingly desperate because their usual mental parlor tricks aren't working on our unusually dense barbarian, is forced to abandon subtlety and bring their more direct, though still arcane, powers to bear. It's like watching a chess master finally resort to throwing the chessboard. The air in the chamber crackles with an almost visible force. The hum, that incessant psychic vibration you've grown to loathe, intensifies to a piercing shriek that feels like it's shredding your inner ear. Spectral energies coalesce, manifesting as flickering shadows, tendrils of smoke, or crackling arcs of dark lightning that dance erratically around the sorcerer. The sorcerer himself seems to shimmer, occasionally appearing in multiple places at once, a desperate tactic to confuse Conan's keen, if uncomplicated, eyes. This is their last-ditch effort to physically manifest enough power to deter, incapacitate, or utterly obliterate the barbarian. Conan, however, has a distinct advantage: rage. Pure distilled barbarian rage. He's tired of the tricks, the illusions, the annoying psychic tickling in his brain. He wants to hit something real. He has a bone to pick with these conjurers, not just because they've meddled with Vendya and annoyed his Afghuli allies, but because they tried to confuse him. And Conan doesn't like being confused. It usually means he can't find his breakfast, or that someone has moved his axe. His singular focus becomes the sorcerer himself, piercing through their attempts at misdirection with raw, uncompromising will. He's the unstoppable force meeting the very movable His movements are not graceful, they are devastatingly effective. He doesn't dance or parry, he lunges, he charges, he strikes with brutal, crushing power. His massive axe, normally meant for severing heads or splintering armor, becomes a weapon against intangible forces. Where magic twists reality, Conan's sheer physicality creates its own simple reality. I am here, and I am hitting you now. He might simply stride through a phantom wall of fire, dissipating it through the sheer disbelief of his passage, or he might bring his axe down on an illusory figure, shattering the psychic projection and, perhaps, giving the real sorcerer a splitting migraine. Yasmina, recognizing Conan's unique and terrifying bluntness, supports him strategically. She's not just a helpless bystander. She identifies where the magic seems strongest or where the illusion occasionally falters, guiding Conan with shouts, knowing he needs practical directions. Her sword flashes, warding off lesser magical projections or any more substantial human or formerly human guards that might still be protecting their master. Together, they create a storm of steel and Cimmerian fury against arcane trickery, an authoritative historical fact that speaks to Conan's fighting style. While some ancient martial arts focused on complex stances and philosophical mastery, others emphasized brutal simplicity and overwhelming physical prowess. Many barbarian fighting techniques prioritized shock and awe, designed to quickly overwhelm and terrorize the enemy with raw strength and relentless forward momentum, much like what you're seeing from Conan now. It's effective because it doesn't give the enemy time to think. The battle against the Black Circle leader isn't just about cutting down a man. It's about disrupting and ultimately shattering the very source of their arcane power within the fortress. Their power is intrinsically linked to the dark rituals, the symbols, the focus of their combined wills. As Conan brings his devastating attacks against the leader, the feedback, the reverberations of his raw strength cascade through the network of rituals that permeate the citadel. Each forceful blow delivered to the sorcerer themselves or to vital ritual points around the chamber causes cracks to appear, not just in the air, but perhaps even in the magical infrastructure of the fortress. The humming sound that had plagued your mind all along begins to fluctuate wildly, dropping to a stuttering silence, then urging with painful intensity, like an electrical current gone haywire. The eerie light emanating from the etched symbols on the floor flickers, wanes, then explodes in showers of dark sparks, as if a million tiny batteries just gave up simultaneously. You might hear cracks and groans from the very stone of the fortress, not just physical stress, but the structure itself rebelling against the dismantling of the arcane energy it has so long contained. The pervasive psychic pressure releases in erratic, painful surges, causing short, sharp bursts of terror or intense nausea that you try to ride out. Historians still debate the specific vulnerabilities of perceived magic in various folklore and mythical traditions, whether a magic user can simply be physically harmed, or if there's always some mystical Achilles' heel that needs to be targeted. Conan's method here leans into the simple truth that a body, even one full of magical prowess, is still a body. If you hit it hard enough, things break. An odd or off-topic fact that is both interesting and slightly gross. Did you know that the goo, or plasma, left behind in those cool plasma ball lamps is actually an inert, noble gas, usually neon or xenon, electrified to glow? Imagine the black circle's arcane energies dissolving and leaving behind a much less visually appealing, probably very smelly, pile of unholy plasma that you absolutely do not want to touch. As the leader of the Black Circle falls, either beneath Conan's relentless attacks or through the destructive feedback of their own collapsing magic, the final resounding reverberation tears through the citadel. The magical infrastructure that the Black Circle so meticulously built collapses, disintegrates, much like a poorly maintained computer system finally deciding to self-destruct. The omnipresent, sickening hum ceases abruptly. The unnatural cold is replaced by the raw, natural chill of the mountain air rushing through shattered magical barriers. The insidious illusions evaporate completely, revealing the true, scarred and damp interior of the fortress. It's ugly, utilitarian, and thankfully no longer infested with reality-bending horrors. You look around and realize the Black Circle's power is gone, not just diminished, but irrevocably shattered, its malignant grip over Vendia finally broken. The air is clean, albeit freezing, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, your mind feels truly, perfectly clear. You might notice a strange smell in the air, relief, and probably the faintest scent of smoldering ozone. Victory. And then you remember all the cleanup. The dust settles. Not the mundane kind of dust that collects on your bookshelf, but the spiritual, metaphorical dust from a thoroughly thrashed magical regime. You take a deep, shaky breath, and for the first time in what feels like an age, the air tastes normal, just cold, crisp mountain air, without any unsettling psychic aftertaste or faint scent of burning toast from a bad hallucination. The unnatural silence and humming have vanished, replaced by the mundane, familiar echoes of rockfalls and the whistling wind through newly unveiled crevices. It's glorious, horribly cold and damp, but glorious. But here's the reality check, because stories don't end when the bad guy falls, especially when the bad guy has been psychologically messing with an entire kingdom. The defeat of the Black Circle is a monumental victory, undoubtedly. They're no longer controlling the minds of the Vendian elite or draining the sanity of its prince. You, Conan, Yasmina, and the surviving Afghulis are definitely heroes of the hour, although Conan probably doesn't know what that means, and Yasmina is too dignified to gloat, despite feeling a deep well of satisfaction. However, the consequences of the sorcerer's influence ripple across Vendia like an earthquake through a fragile vase. The royal court, which was teetering on the brink of civil war due to the sorcerer's mind games, remains a hotbed of paranoia and suspicion. Trusted advisors had turned on each other. Family members had been set against one another. Even if the spell is broken, the distrust and the damage to relationships don't just vanish like a bad dream. It's like clearing a computer virus, but the hard drive is still pretty scrambled, and some of the files are permanently corrupted. The kingdom will require immense, long-term healing, politically, socially, and emotionally. They'll need a lot of therapy, and maybe a very long nap. And then there's Bundachand, our poor prince. He's free of the immediate sorceress influence, his mind no longer actively puppeted. But the toll remains. He's no longer babbling utter nonsense, which is a step up, but his mind is still terribly fractured. He might have brief moments of lucidity where he recognizes his sister, perhaps offers a quiet, weak smile, before his gaze becomes vacant again, or he drifts into quiet, self-absorbed reverie, muttering disjointed phrases about the stars singing backwards or the color of pure silence. His personality, once sharp, has been blunted, his memory unreliable, his spirit scarred. He requires constant care and attention, often seemingly living in a world only he can perceive. This isn't just about recovering from an illness, it's about grieving the loss of a whole person, even as his body lives on. It's a sobering reminder of the true cost of such insidious magic. An authoritative historical fact here. Psychological warfare and long-term political destabilization, even without overt magic, have historical parallels. The prolonged trauma of events like the McCarthy-era's pervasive paranoia in the U.S., or the aftermath of totalitarian regimes in the 20th century, show how deep and lasting distrust and suspicion can become, far outliving the initial cause. Society's healing takes generations. The political landscape of Vendya has been utterly reshaped. The monarchy, despite Yasmina's valiant efforts, has been severely weakened. Trust in central authority has eroded, replaced by fragmented loyalties and the whispers of a secret society. Powerful provincial governors and ambitious nobles, perhaps sensing the fragility of the crown, might begin to assert greater independence, threatening the cohesion of the entire kingdom. It's a very complicated power vacuum that no one in Vendya actually knows how to fill, least of all the queen. Historians still debate whether societal resilience is innate or primarily fostered by specific leadership or cultural institutions. Vendya's future will be a true test of that resilience because they face both the known dangers of ambition and the insidious, lingering effects of unseen forces. Yasmina faces an uphill battle to restore stability. She needs to rebuild her court, quell dissent, and reassert her authority, all while tending to her severely damaged brother. She now knows the dark powers that exist in the world, the kind that target not just armies, but the very sanity of her loved ones. This experience will forge her into an even harder, more capable ruler, but at a profound personal cost. You probably hope she also gets a decent night's sleep, and maybe a very large cup of chamomile tea. Meanwhile, our man Conan, ever the pragmatist, sees the whole political quagmire for what it is, an absolute mess that requires entirely too much talking. His interest usually ends when the smashing is over and the initial loot is collected. He has fulfilled his side of the bargain. He rescued the prince, and he dismantled the magical infrastructure that was irritating him and hindering his strategic aims. But now, as the true scale of Vendya's internal collapse reveals itself, his interest quickly wanes. He doesn't deal in rebuilding civilizations or hand-holding fragile nobility back to mental health. That sounds suspiciously like work that doesn't involve enough swinging an axe. An odd or off-topic fact that illustrates this "what do we do now" feeling. The phrase "curse of the pharaohs," popular in sensationalized history, refers to a supposed curse on those who disturb ancient Egyptian tombs. While almost certainly fictional, it illustrates the lingering bad vibes and fear that can remain long after a threat has been neutralized, impacting perception and public sentiment. Even without a direct magical curse, the lingering effects on Bundachand and the political system are very real and will continue to challenge Yasmina long after the Black Circle's defeat. The aftermath also deals with the disposition of the defeated sorcerers and their remnants. Some may have fled into the mountains, perhaps intending to rebuild their vile circle. Others are found dead or captured, their power truly extinguished. The grim work of cleansing the stronghold begins, the last vestiges of its terrifying magic purged, the air finally clearing of the residual darkness. The Vendians need to dismantle the remaining pockets of cultist influence, pursue the fleeing agents, and secure the regions most deeply affected by the Black Circle's machinations. It's not a pretty bow tied on this adventure. It's a massive, exhausting, potentially years-long cleanup operation. Conan, having witnessed the devastating effectiveness of the Black Circle's methods, undoubtedly leaves this experience with a new, grudging respect for the darker forms of sorcery. He probably won't admit it, but he knows magic is something that can indeed bypass his brawn, even if only to drive him slightly more insane than usual. This deepens his cautious contempt for those who wield it. He certainly isn't looking for another encounter, not unless there's a particularly enticing chest of magical gold involved. As Yasmina looks around, grim-faced, assessing the immense task ahead, Conan looks towards the distant mountain passes. He probably catches your eye, a glint in his, as if to say, "Yeah, not my problem." And you know what that means. So, Vendia is left with a fractured royal family, a traumatized prince who might spontaneously explain the cosmic implications of toast, and a court full of politicians who probably think they're all under surveillance by an invisible interdimensional bureaucracy. For Queen Yasmina, it's a future of endless rebuilding, painstaking diplomacy, and trying to explain why her brother now occasionally giggles at statues. But for Conan, watching this slow, complicated unraveling from the shadowy comfort of the ruined Black Circle Citadel, his internal mission-accomplished siren just went off, followed by a louder "time to hit the road before they ask for more favors" bell. He surveys the wreckage, the pale, haunted face of Bunda Chand, the grim determination on Yasmina's countenance, and the lingering sense of unease, even amidst the victory. For Conan, all this feels less like a triumphant conclusion, and more like the beginning of an administrative nightmare. He's not here for the grand reopening ceremonies, he's here for the brawl. Once the fight is done, the loot is, if not distributed, then at least counted, and the immediate problem eliminated. His mind shifts. He glances towards the towering Himalayan peaks, still stark and formidable against the bleeding dawn, and they whisper not of settled lives or rebuilding efforts, but of unknown paths and fresh challenges. They are always calling, and Conan always answers. His departure from Vendia, or more precisely, from the fringes of Vendia, is as characteristic as his entrance. He doesn't hold formal farewells, doesn't exchange sentimental promises. He's certainly not staying for any royal banquet. He probably finds their etiquette too restrictive, and their food portions too dainty for a Cimmerian of his stature. You can imagine him exchanging a terse, almost imperceptible nod with Yasmina, perhaps a flash of grudging mutual respect passing between them. He has done what he promised, and now it's time to disappear back into the vastness of the world, leaving Vendia to pick up its own shattered pieces. He's the anti-fairy godmother. He cleans up messes, but only with an axe, and very few polite social cues. He heads back the way you came, deeper into the harsh, uncompromising mountains. The Afghulis, who had joined him in this suicidal venture, watch him go, a mix of awe and relief in their eyes. They've witnessed his ferocity, his stubborn refusal to be broken by magic, and his utterly pragmatic brilliance. Many would gladly follow him anywhere, yet they know his restless spirit demands new horizons. Some might decide to venture with him, others will return to their traditional mountain strongholds, perhaps a little richer, certainly a lot more legendary after their adventures with the Cimmerian. They now have a lifetime of tales about fighting mind wizards, usually accompanied by hand gestures that suggest severe mental breakdown. What truly draws Conan away from this tamed conflict and the complexities of political reconstruction? It's his fundamental, unfettered nature. He is a force of wildness, an untamed element in a world increasingly burdened by the complexities of civilization, even ancient civilization. He doesn't yearn for stability, bureaucracy, or polite societal norms. He thrives on raw danger, the thrill of the hunt, the simplicity of a fight, and the promise of discovery in places untouched by the hand of man, or by boring court decrees. Think of him as the original wanderlust embodiment, except his travel plans always involve at least one impromptu bar brawl and no comfortable sleep arrangements. He's immune to the temptation of a cushy retirement because his idea of a good time involves considerably more risk. His departure isn't about escaping consequences, it's about following an instinct. The constant pressure of civilization, even this rudimentary ancient form, simply doesn't suit him. He probably sees Vendia's political troubles as exactly that. Too many heads on too few shoulders, all arguing about very little that interests him. This isn't a retirement, a period of quiet reflection after an epic adventure. This is merely the next chapter of his relentless journey across the globe. He probably feels more comfortable battling a pack of wolves on a lonely mountain pass than enduring a particularly awkward tea party, an authoritative historical fact that speaks to Conan's perennial wanderlust. In many historical and ethnographic accounts of migratory peoples or ancient barbarians, there's often a strong cultural emphasis on mobility, adaptation to new environments, and a rejection of sedentary lifestyles. This wasn't just about resource acquisition, it was deeply ingrained in their cultural identity and survival strategies. Conan embodies this spirit to an extreme, living on the fringes of society by choice. Conan leaves behind him not only a broken black circle, but also the ripple effects of his presence. Yasmina is left with a profound realization about the true nature of global threats, and perhaps a lingering respect for certain barbarians, however annoying they may be. The Afghulis are left with reinforced tribal power and a newfound sense of respect, or perhaps fear, for the Mad King from the lowlands, i.e. Yasmina, who rode into the mountains to fight phantoms. His passage through their lives leaves an indelible mark, for good or ill. Historians still debate whether significant historical figures truly had profound impact on events beyond their immediate sphere, or if they were merely powerful actors within existing socio-political currents. For Conan, however, he truly alters the landscape. His unique approach to problems, specifically his absolute lack of a coherent moral compass beyond "I like gold and hate sorcerers," leads him to solutions that polite society would never consider. He's a wild card in any deck, an odd or off-topic fact that is truly surprising. Did you know that human intuition, that gut feeling, is believed by some neuroscientists to be an evolutionary adaptation allowing us to process vast amounts of subconscious data quickly and make snap decisions without explicit conscious reasoning? Conan's actions are almost entirely governed by this visceral, untamed intuition, far beyond academic logic or intricate planning, which makes him remarkably good at surviving utterly ridiculous situations, especially when magical folk are involved. He's not thinking, he's sensing. As you walk beside him for a while, feeling the invigorating chill of the high peaks, you might feel a shift within yourself too. This journey has not just been an adventure. It has been a descent into primal forces, a test of sanity, and an immersion in a world both beautiful and brutal. You realize that your comfortable, structured existence back home is utterly alien to Conan. He belongs out here, where the world is raw, unfettered, and dangerous. And it's this very unfettered, untamed spirit that keeps him going, propelled by a cosmic restlessness that won't let him settle. He strides onward, a colossal, unbowed figure against the vast canvas of the peaks. You watch him go, melting into the distant horizon, drawn by new adventures, new perils, new treasures to find, and perhaps new irritating sorcerers to smash. The mountains stand as silent witnesses to his passage, much like the untold thousands of stories of his bloody travels before this, and the many, many more to come. You're left with the fading echo of his footsteps, the crisp scent of pine, and the unsettling realization that somewhere out there, a new story, a new chaos, is already calling for him. As the cold mountain winds soften into a gentle hum, and the distant peaks fade into the merging light and shadow of twilight, you feel a lingering chill that has nothing to do with the air outside your window. It's the echo of towering mountains and treacherous passes, of ancient sorceries that threatened to unhinge reality, and the stubborn, unstoppable force of one particular Cimmerian. You journeyed alongside him through mind-bending illusions and brutal combat, watching him confront horrors that would break lesser mortals, yet found him immune, shielded by his primal, uncomplicated will. He leaves behind chaos, healed and wounded lands, and countless unresolved problems, just as the wild spirit within him demands new, untamed horizons. Now, as the world outside dims and the quiet sounds of your own home return, take a moment to truly settle. The adventure is over. The barbarian has moved on, and Vendia will continue to heal and grow long after the sorcerer's influence has been erased. The dark secrets of the Black Circle are sealed, and the brave Queen Yasmina begins her difficult path toward reconstruction. You, dear listener, have safely navigated one of the Conan's most unsettling quests, experiencing terror, awe, and perhaps a touch of his stubborn defiance. Rest now, with the knowledge that even in the darkest corners of ancient tales, hope, however battered, can still glimmer. May your dreams be peaceful and far removed from mind-controlling sorcerers.